Geek Myths, a novel about life, love, and the pursuit of sonic screwdrivers. Available in paperback and Kindle edition from Amazon.
Scanning for audio.
Welcome to a Tin Dog podcast. This time I'm talking about River Song Volume 4. Volume 4! The Diary of River Song. Good old Alex. And on the front of this box set, well, it's the Fourth Doctor. Do you remember a time when the Diary of River Song was coming out and there was talk of the Doctor appearing and some of the old ones turning up? And everyone was a bit, don't know how that's going to work. Oh, it's going to interfere with the continuity. Forget it. Do we care? No. This is Big Finish. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. It's a 4-story box set, same as always, and this one's got Tom in it. One thing that the River Song box set's very good at is wrong-footing us, presenting us with one idea, one thought, one direction, and then going off in a slightly different one. Also, it's very good at presenting us with what I can only describe as a pre-credit sequence, something that is from a moment further on in the narrative, rather than a pre-credit as in this is what happens before the story starts. It's a subtle difference, but one that's kind of important to me. And I don't mind it happening. As long as it just happens here, that's fine. Let's not mess with the narrative structure of other episodes, the programmes, shall we? Because it's always best to start with something that grabs you. It gives you a bit of credit that allows you to pay it off with a slow build-up narrative. Now, so far, as of this second, I've only managed to listen to story number 1 and story number 2, but I wanted to talk to you about those first, and of course this whole podcast is going to be about all 4 of them. What I'll be doing is I'll be editing them together. Oh yes, that's how we roll round here. So story number 1, Time in a Bottle. Here's the synopsis. When River Song visits a place where time has vanished, a genie escapes its bottle. The Discordia have freed nihilistic time pirates in devilish forms, altering the past to make sure they never lose. This time, River may have met her match, and involving the Doctor can only make things worse. 4.1 Time in a Bottle by Emma Reeves and Matt Fitton. River is recruited by a rival to explore a star system where time no longer exists. Professor Jemima Still has picked up a signal from an impossible source and takes an expert team to investigate, but their mission is about to unleash hell upon the universe. Oh, it's a lovely introduction to this. It really is. You've got the sort of alien races that you've come to expect in more, let's put it, more literary sources of Doctor Who. Stuff where you can't actually see them, because let's face it, a large insect anti-person is going to look a bit, well, potentially a bit ropey on screen, but in your head and on audio, perfectly great casting, perfectly great design. You've also got a cyborg boy. Now, admittedly, I've cast him as Cyborg from the Teen Titans Go, but in my head, that's going to work. That's what he's looking like, rather than to say Cyborg from the Justice League. And you've got a load of other characters as well. But of course, you've got River Song at its core. And you've got River Song being, well, you know, just... Look at it this way. When you've got Sarah Jane Smith Adventures, you've got Sarah Jane playing the role of a pseudo-doctor. Each of the characters in spin-off stories become a lesser version of the Doctor. Even Charlotte Pollard Adventures, that kind of thing, right? That's acceptable. That is the way that narrative works. You've got one main character, the person whose name's on the box, driving the narrative forward. They suddenly become cleverer. An example of this in films is the way that Thor in the Avengers movie is quite clever. In his own movies, he's a bit dim. same character, written slightly differently. Well, it's the other way around here. When the Doctor's around, everyone's going to look dimmer than they actually are. Now, the difference with River Song is that she's already exceptionally bright. She's not the Doctor, but for the longest of times, she was the only character in the universe who could keep up. So here, the difference between River Song in other narratives and here, well, there's none, because she was always the brightest button. And of course, she is a reformed psychopath. Mostly. The first story's cracking sets everything up for the whole of the story arc, and eventually introduces the villain that will be the main character in at least the next story. And of course, lays the groundwork for the overarching villains of the piece for the whole thing. I don't want to give away any more narrative hints and tips, but let's just face it. The creatures involved did remind me, for a completely different reason, of the Hagumemnons from The Hitchhiker's Guide. But of course, their entire motivation and method of change is very different and is a lot more Doctor Who-y. And remember, Douglas Adams didn't create those. That was John Lloyd. But you know what? If something sounds a bit like something else, so what? It's the use you put the characters to that matters. And this is very different from anything ever Hitchhiker's Guide. So your first story, your basic story, involves your archaeological trip to a planet somewhere. Your second story is a lot more of a runaround. Here's the synopsis for that. 4.2 Kings of Infinite Space by Donald McLeary. With the Discordia on their tail, River and her friends run for their lives across time and space. But when your opponent can twist cause and effect to ensure victory, at every turn then escape may well be impossible. Now with this story, it's more of, well, it felt a little bit like an advert for how good the writer's imagination was. River and her gang of friends are on the run from the villains, and I don't want to say any more than that, and they are trying to escape. You can do this on audio, and on audio you can go anywhere and it all looks brilliant, but of course you have to describe it. And that could become very wearing, but Big Finish are good at this sort of thing, so it's not going to be wearing. It's just going to be very, very good. And it is. But it is more of a runaround. Yes, it's setting things up. And it has got a great, well, twisty, turny storyline, worthy of the River Song franchise. And of course, it leads nicely on to story number 3, which, through the gift of editing, I'll be talking about now. And so, thanks to the timey-wimey nature of podcasting and, of course, of just listening and reviewing stuff, I get now talk about story number 3 and 4 from the Diary of River Song Series 4. Here's the synopsis for story number 3. Whodunnit by Matt Fitton. Melody Malone finds herself in a castle with an assortment of strange companions. But guests are being murdered one by one, time is running out for a mystery to be solved, and Franz Kafka is hiding something in the attic. Now, as so often happens these days, you can't really talk about some stories without giving away spoilers, and the spoilers would indeed be, huge for this story. When you're listening to the extras, you do realise that the cast largely had no idea what was going on during this story until the very end, which is good because it's a payoff. Now, it's a classic whodunit, but it's far too much of a classic whodunit. You start going, I know these people. And you just say that very early on. Now, far be it from me to use the word cliches or indeed memes, because, it's not big or clever. Trust me, it's not. But the existence of Franz Kafka in this story made me smile. Bit of a fan. Now, I know you've got your pure artistness, because the guy wanted all of his work destroyed when he died. So his life was not the life of someone who wanted to be a writer, but kind of was, if that makes sense. Enough about that. What needs to be said is that this is a cracking whodunit, and it's nice and spooky and it's very Doctor Who-y. But, as with the other two stories, there was no sign of Tom. Now, some of you might have bought this box set going, oh, it's going to have Tom in it. But of course it's not. It's a River Song box set. The Doctor's the companion here. And eventually, because I can't tell you any more about the third story, which is perhaps my favourite of the three, I have to leave it and move on to story number 4. Someone I Once Knew by John Dorney. Here's the synopsis for that. River has tried in vain to keep the dusk audio away from the Doctor. Now, as devils run riot through universal space-time, her own past with her husband is being rewritten. There is one last hope for the universe, a love story, but one that must find an ending. Now this story, this is the one that's got Uncle Tom in it. It's got the 4th Doctor. Perhaps it's not quite a 4th Doctor that you know and recognise, because we all are worried about how all this continuity is all going to fit together. But given that River is currently fighting a race that's messing about with time, we can forgive almost anything. And it works. Don't get worried, don't get het up, don't get confused. River didn't want to involve the Doctor at all in this storyline, but the Doctor ends up getting involved, and the 4th Doctor and River make a glorious pair. When the Doctor talks about the times they've met before, it just made me beam with smiley laughter. It truly did. So, clearly this story is the end of the box set. Hopefully there'll be more. I genuinely hope there will be. But how River can meet the other Doctors beyond this is, well, it's just as beyond me now as it was beforehand, and it's worked every time. A great box set? Of course it is. A must for any River Song fan? Without question. And with that, I'll play you the trailer and let you decide for yourself. So until next time, be seeing you.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, The Diary of River Song, Series 4.
Horns? Forked tails? Is that a pitchfork? Well, who'd have thought hell would be so kitsch?
You will speak when the Queen addresses you.
Oh, shut up, Mail. We don't have time for protocol. Since when did the university employ endangered giant ants as bailiffs?
Since the last time they tried to collect your student loan payments.
Computer, state primary mission.
Primary mission is defense of Discordia battleship Anchory.
Halt! Cease your activity! Raise your hands! Activate destructor beam! Activate matter violator! Good choice, thank you.
Hey, I'm Franz, by the way. Franz Kafka. And you?
What brings you here, Monsieur Dante?
Inspector Dante.
Remind us which force you are with?
Dante assists Interpol on many cases.
Doctor, we need to get away!
Ah, there you are. Yes. No, don't thank me. I thought you'd need a spot of rescuing. I'm awfully good at rescuing, and don't worry, we've already taken off.
You really don't understand us at all, do you, Doctor?
You can't possibly have got ahead of us in time.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Yes, you're not Romana. You're Professor Riversong. You're my wife. Hello, sweetie.
That was the Doctor Who Tin Dog Podcast, available on iTunes, YouTube, Twitter, RSS, Vimeo, and across the internet. Doctor Who and its associated properties are all copyright and trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Why not become a supporter by visiting patreon.com/tindog. Contact the show on tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.